Hi, I'm Mike from 1A Auto. We've been selling auto parts for over 30 years. We're dedicated to delivering quality auto parts, expert customer service, fast and free shipping, all backed by our 100% satisfaction guarantee. So visit us at 1aauto.com, your trusted source for quality auto parts.
To do the brake job, the first thing you need to do is take off the wheel. And before you jack up the vehicle, you want to crack all of these lug nuts loose because that way the wheel won't spin when you're trying to turn the lug nuts. You can use a 22mm socket to do this, or if you want to use the lug nut wrench that comes with the car and the spare tire kit, you can use that as well. You can use a jack and jack stands to lift the vehicle in a driveway situation or a garage, but we have a lift to make the video shooting a little bit easier. So we're going to go ahead and raise it up on the lift. Now that the vehicle is off the ground, we can remove the rest of the lug nuts. It's easy to use a 22mm deep socket to reach in there and spin them out. Now we can pull the wheel off of the vehicle, just like this. We're going to take the caliper off of the caliper bracket next. You can do that with a 14mm wrench on the bolt right here. This is the lower caliper bolt. We'll just crack it loose and then we can spin it out by hand. And now we'll do the upper bolt, which is right up here at the top of the bracket. Again, we'll just crack it loose and then spin it right out by hand. When you take off the caliper, like right now it feels pretty tight, so what I like to do is I'll kind of put my weight on it and pull, and that collapses the piston a little bit. It pushes down on this piston so that it's easy to take off. Once you have the caliper removed, you want to hang it with a bungee cord or something similar, maybe some wire, and you want to hang it so that there's no weight ever hanging on the brake line or the brake hose. So just like that. We're going to take the caliper bracket off next, and for that we need an 18mm wrench or an 18mm socket. And we'll just go ahead and pull down on this to get it loose. We'll loosen the bottom one as well. If the bolt's loose, you can pull them both out. And then you should be able to pull the caliper bracket and the brake pads off all at once. The rotor itself needs to come off next. And holding the rotor on is this T30 Torx bit, or Torx bolt. It looks like a star. So we're gonna go ahead and pull that out next. Amazingly, this one is turning. It's really common for these things to be rusted in place. And if they are rusted in place, what you can do is you can put a wrench on like this, and then use the ratchet like this, and that will hold the rotor in place as you turn it. So it allows you to get a little more force on it. The rotor is actually stuck on the hub. Normally you could pull the rotor right off at this point, and I would bet that if you're not in New England, you could probably do that. But in New England, everything is rusty, and therefore we have to hammer this rotor off because it's rusted all around the hub and probably even around all of the lug nuts, or all of the lugs. So what we're gonna do is spray some rust penetrant in each one of these holes and try and loosen up the rust. Now that we've got the rust penetrant in there and sitting for a few minutes, now we're gonna hit it with a hammer. And ideally, you wanna hit in between these lugs, but in this case, the rotor is just going to be thrown in the trash anyways because we're putting a new rotor on. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit it right on the rotor surface. That will give us fulcrum and lever effect. Hopefully we'll get this rotor off in no time. You can see it's loosening up. There we go. This is a really common thing to do in New England or anywhere there's rust. But yeah, if you don't have rust or you live in a desert or something, the rotor comes off way easier than this. Now you can pull the brake pads right out of the caliper bracket. Sometimes they'll be stuck in there, or sometimes they'll just fall out. That'll do it. You can see we have the old rotor here and the new rotor here. It looks identical, except for brand new, of course. It has the chamfered slot for the torque bolt, so it holds it onto the hub. Obviously the same bolt pattern, the right thickness. And then we have the brake pads. You can see the old ones are very worn out. They're definitely at the end of their life. But the new ones have the same squeaker, just like the factory one. And they'll fit and look and work just like the originals. One of the nice things to do when you're doing a rotor in a rusty environment is you want to put some anti-seize around this hub, and that way when the next person takes the rotor off, it won't be as stuck on as it was for us. Sort of like just a nice thing to do for the next person. So we'll put a little anti-seize on there, right around where it rusts, and then we'll slide the rotor on. Make sure you line up this hole with this hole in the hub. And then we can put the bolt in. Much like we put the anti-seize on the hub, we'll put a little bit on this bolt too, because these also like to get stuck in the hub. It's usually only a precaution if you live in the rusty environment that we live in. So, and once it's hand tightened, then we'll tighten it up with a ratchet. You can see that there's some greasy palm prints all around this, along with a little bit of anti-seize. We're gonna go ahead and spray that off with some brake clean, and that way when the new pads and the new rotors go together for the first time, it'll be a nice clean environment for them, and there won't be any grease or other material messing up the brakes. And be sure to do the backside as well. We're now going to clean the caliper bracket so that the caliper slides are nice and smooth for the brake pads. Otherwise, the brake pads could get stuck and then they'll wear unevenly. You can easily do this with brake clean and a rag or a wire brush. We happen to have a parts washing tank, so we're going to use that. But either way, it works great. Brake clean is a phenomenal fluid that will clean this great, along with a wire brush. The next thing that you want to check is to make sure that these caliper slides are moving freely. Occasionally they'll get water intrusion and then they'll rust up and they'll get stuck. And that, much like having the caliper slides that are clean, will also wear your brake pads unevenly. So if yours are not moving freely, you can just pull them right out. The rubber boot slides off the top. Just like that. And inside you can see it's greasy. So what you would want to do is clean out the bore with some brake clean and then lightly grease this. Make sure you don't put too much grease, because if you put too much grease, then the bolt will actually create a hydraulic situation in here where it won't push all the way down. But you just want to lightly coat it with grease and then put it right back in until it moves freely. Right here, these are your brake pad slider brackets, and they are removable and replaceable. Sometimes it'll come with a brake pad kit, other times it won't. These ones are made out of stainless steel, so they'll probably outlast the vehicle. If yours are stainless steel, they're probably in good shape, so you just need to wash them. Now we're going to install the caliper bracket back onto the knuckle. We'll slide these two 18mm bolts into the knuckle and thread them in by hand. Now you can tighten them up with your wrench of choice, either an 18mm wrench or an 18mm socket. In this case, the 18mm wrench happens to be in my hand, so that's what I'm going to go with. Now we're going to torque the two bolts to 140 foot-pounds with a torque wrench. The inner brake pad has like a metal clip that goes on it, just like this. This came off the old brake pads. And this just basically goes up against the piston up here so that it's a nice flat surface. If yours were destroyed, it probably wouldn't matter a whole lot, but since we have a nice set here, we're gonna reuse them. Before we put the brake pads in, we're gonna put a little Antiseize on the edges of the brake pad, and that will allow them to slide nice and smooth. Even if they get hot, it won't burn off because it's rated for a very high temperature. You just want to get into the slot and then on the flat spots where it rides. And at this point, you can slide them right into the bracket. All right, there's one. And then we'll do the inside one next. There we are. Before we put the caliper on, we have to compress the piston back into the caliper. So we're going to use a large C-clamp for that. And all you do for that is spin it in like this. And then you can slowly turn the C-clamp and it will compress the caliper piston back into the housing. You have to go a little bit slowly because it's moving all of the brake fluid back up into the master cylinder, which it doesn't necessarily love to do. So you have to do it in a slow fashion. All right, now it's fully compressed, so I can remove the C-clamp. Now we'll take the caliper off of the bungee cord that we have, pull it out so we don't forget it, and we can put the caliper back onto the caliper bracket and over the brake pads. Now we can take the two 14mm bolts that go in the caliper and hand tighten those. Now we can tighten up these two 14mm with a torque wrench to 20 foot-pounds. Now we can put the wheel back on. Just line up the lug nuts, slide it on, and then you can hand tighten the lug nuts. With all of the lug nuts hand tight, then you can put your ratchet on it, and we're just going to snug them up as best we can with the vehicle in the air, and then we'll get it on the ground and tighten it up. Now we'll lower the vehicle right back down to the ground. Now we're going to torque the lug nuts to 125 foot-pounds. And we'll do it in a cross pattern.
Thanks for watching. Visit us at oneauto.com for quality auto parts, fast and free shipping, and the best customer service in the industry.